This time on Lantern Lab, it's a turd. Welcome to another episode of Lantern Lab. Today we're going to rebuild a Coleman 275. Here are the tools we'll need. 4 box end wrenches, 3/4 inch, 11/16, 7/16, and 5/16. We'll also need an adjustable wrench, which is actually the only wrench I'm going to use for this video to show you that you don't need much in the way of tools to work on Coleman lanterns. You'll also need a pair of pliers, a 4-way tool that you can get at your local auto parts store, and a replacement schrader valve. Be sure your valve is rated for contact with fuel. You may need some sealant. I like Loctite, but there are many things that will work. And optionally, a replacement generator. Coleman made the 275 from 1976 through 1979. It was introduced as a 75th anniversary lantern, but wasn't well received. People didn't like the turdy brown color or the schrader valve. I'm using an adjustable wrench to remove the 7/16 inch generator nut. Since the 275 doesn't have a separate cleaning rod control, the valve has to be in the middle position to remove the generator. Now I'm removing the burner frame nut. This is 11/16. The nut that holds the burner on is 3/4 and frankly would be easier to remove with a regular wrench, but it can be done with the adjustable. The adjustable wrench fits pretty well to take the valve out of the fount, but this one was really tight. So I took it over to the bench vise, which has soft jaws installed to protect the valve. Back on the bench, the valve comes out of the fount, which brings us to the fuel air tube. This fuel air tube is backwards from what you're used to in a 200A or 220. In a 275, the fuel air rod moves down to admit fuel. There's a groove in the rod which lets fuel into the hole at the bottom of the tube. This groove will be important later when we reassemble the lantern. With the fuel air tube removed, we can use the 4-way tool to remove the schrader valve. Start with the forked part to remove the main valve body. You'll probably find that it's stuck, so give a yank with the pliers. If you're lucky, the entire valve will come out, but most likely you'll have to dig around with the pointy part of the tool. Be careful not to damage the fuel air rod or spring while you're poking around in there. I got the spring wound up on the tool once and it was very hard to get back off. Make sure you get the old sealing ring out. The place where the schrader valve sits has to be completely clean, so take your time. When all the pieces are out, run the thread chase in to make sure the threads are clean, and then you can thread in your new valve. The fuel air rod in a 275 must stick out when the lantern is running to allow fuel up the fuel air tube. The adjustment here is important. The rod should protrude just slightly when the valve is closed, and stick out more when the valve is open, allowing fuel in around the grooved part of the rod. Take time to ensure that you can blow through the valve and fuel air tube when the valve is open, and can't when the valve is closed. I found that sometimes the threads on the fuel air tube need a little bit of sealant to ensure a tight seal. A drop of Loctite works perfectly for this. I had trouble with the generator to valve connection on this lantern. Something had nicked where the generator seats and made a leak. This caused some unpleasantness. To fix it, I sanded the area with 1000 grit sandpaper and lapped the joint with polishing compound until the spot was mostly gone. I put a small amount of Loctite on the valve threads to be sure there were no leaks. On a 275, the valve centers over the label, and the sealant helps with indexing the valve where I want it. Add the collar and burner assembly, the burner frame nut, and the generator. To test my work, I put some pressure into the fount and make sure I don't hear any leaks. 275s are notorious for leaking valves, so this job is important. Open the valve and hear the air, close it, and ensure airflow stops. Since I had trouble with the generator seal, I wanted to check that I had cured that leak. With fuel in the fount, I pressurized and opened the valve while I covered the gas jet with my finger. There are no leaks around the generator nut, so I know that's fixed. If the seal between the fuel air tube and the valve leaks, air will escape through the valve even when it's closed. To test for it, pressurize the lantern and put a drop of water on the gas jet. If you can see bubbles, you know there's a leak. Tie on a pair of mantles and we're ready for a test run. As you can see, it was cold outside, and the lantern took a while to settle into a good burn. Because the schrader valve is a known weak point, I try to always remove pressure from the lantern when I'm done using it. So there we go, 275 all fixed up and ready to give light for years to come. Hey, thanks for watching.